Hey everybody, Epic99 here with a quick video discussing something I've been thinking a lot about lately, some of the connections between a new game that's been riddled with some issues that I've actually been having a lot of fun with, and one of my all-time favorite games, some of the overlaps between those two things. So I want to talk a little bit today about some connections between Anthem, the new game from BioWare, and my all-time favorite game, Final Fantasy XI. So let's get into it. Boom, hello, it's Epic99 here, coming at you with some Darksiders action today. So Final Fantasy XI is one of my all-time favorite video games. I've been playing it since before it released in America in a beta test. I've put in countless days worth of time into the game over the last 20 years that it's been around. It's really become a part of my life. So I love Final Fantasy XI, and recently I've had a lot of fun Twitch streaming it as a way to kind of reinvigorate my love of that game. I've also been playing a newer game recently called Anthem. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Anthems and all the myriad of problems that Anthem has. And I want to spend some time in this video just talking about some of the connections between these two games and the reason why I think Anthem is worth your time. So first off, a couple of things that Final Fantasy XI got really, really right. The job system. So in Final Fantasy XI, the game uses a job system, and what that essentially means is you have one main character. Now, I really prefer games where I can kind of play as one character and really connect in some sort of way with that main character. I don't really like games that ask me to switch between characters regularly. Like, for example, in World of Warcraft, where you have to choose a character, assign that character a job or a role, and then if you want to do a different job or play as a mage or whatever, you have to start a new character. And that's okay to do that. Some people prefer it that way, but I like to have one guy who I can really kind of invest in, and that's my guy, right? Destiny is sort of like this too. There's 3 character slots in Destiny, but you can't use your Warlock to acquire and build out gear for your Titan. It doesn't really work like that. In fact, it's the opposite of that. When I'm on Warlock in Destiny and I get exotic drop, and it's not for Warlock, like it's for a Titan, I get pissed because I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I just don't like playing Destiny in that particular way. So Final Fantasy XI really nailed this concept of giving you one main character with myriad variety and sort of flexibility with how you want to build that character up, how you want to play that character. And as an extension of the job system, what that ultimately resulted in was this gameplay loop where you could level up one of your jobs, let's say Summoner, and then once you got that to where you wanted it to be, you could then use that job to go out and get items and work on things that you needed to get for your other jobs. And that was a really great way to kind of keep you playing, or at least keep me playing, because I loved that sense of like, okay, I've got this job to this point, now I can use it to go get cool stuff for my other jobs, and I can switch back and forth between them at any point. And that's a really cool kind of gameplay mechanic and something that Final Fantasy XI absolutely got right. The next thing that Final Fantasy XI really nails is the sort of end game job build-outs. So in Final Fantasy XI, the reason you come back, the reason I've been playing the game for 20 years is because it's really challenging and difficult to obtain the gear that you need to have to really make your job in that game shine. You put on top of that 20 different jobs you can play as, and it's going to take a ton of time and commitment to go through and do all that work and kind of get all those gear pieces. But that's a system that I really, really love. It's, again, sort of using Destiny as a kind of a foil here. That system doesn't really exist in Destiny. Yes, there are pieces of gear maybe that you're going for that will sort of change the way you play, but everything is so balanced and everything is so kind of like similar in that game that there isn't really anything out there that's going to significantly maybe really change the way you play that game once you work towards getting it. And maybe a few things here and there, like maybe there's a few exotic pieces of armor that will help you do certain things that you wanted to do or that you couldn't do before, but that level of craziness doesn't exist as much as it did in Final Fantasy XI. You know, you get that AF plus 3 after months of work, and you get that extra refresh effect or whatever it is, or you get that extra summoning magic skill, and all of a sudden your blood packs on Summoner are just like destroying things. It really makes you feel like the time that you invested in getting those pieces of gear is worthwhile. And that's one of the parts of Final Fantasy XI that I always loved, and that's really kept me coming back all this time. Which brings me to Anthem. Obviously, this is a newer game. It came out just a few weeks ago. It is a game that has been receiving tons of negativity on the internet, and most of it is justified. I mean, that, you know, Anthem could have probably benefited from at least 6 months to a year's worth of extra time in development. So it is certainly a game that has some challenges and some issues, and there's stuff in it that just annoy me to no end, and I have a lot of problems with the game. But I've sort of stuck through all of that and continued to play it, and I've actually found it to be really fun. And the reason I think I'm starting to realize why I really like Anthem is because of the similarities that it has to Final Fantasy XI. So let's get into some of those now. So Anthem, one character, multiple jobs. Just like in Final Fantasy XI, this is a part of the game that I really respond well to. I like having one main guy and then building up that one person into something really special. It's not a job system per se, but it functions similarly. So in Anthem, you've got one human character who can jump into these 4 different suits of armor: Colossus, Ranger, Storm, and Interceptor. And so, you know, that sort of ability to quickly shift between jobs, between play styles, between roles, very similar feel to Final Fantasy XI, right? You jump on with your new gear set, you go out, you're a red mage, you're a blue mage, or whatever you need to be. In Anthem, all 4 of these job classes feel fun, they feel interesting, and there's lots of different things each one can do. I'm really excited, and hopefully in the future that Anthem, and I think they've alluded to this, are going to add more javelins. I think that's just going to make the game more interesting and better. So the more jobs, the better for me. So Anthem nails it on that. You know, it feels a lot like that feeling of Final Fantasy XI, where you could change roles. Not like Destiny, though. Destiny doesn't have that. It doesn't feel like I can't, on the same character, switch from Warlock to Titan. I have to log out, change characters, log back in, do everything in the game again, essentially, to level that person up. So I like that all the XP is shared with all of your jobs, just like in Final Fantasy XI, right? All the XP stays on your guy, and then you just change sort of as needed. That's a little bit different from Final Fantasy XI. Sorry, the different jobs have their own XP systems, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, you know, being able to sort of switch on the fly to a new job and then working on that job is something that I think Anthem does really, really well. Next up is game-changing build-outs in the end game of Anthem. I didn't really realize this until I got to the end, but the Masterworks and the legendary gear items that you're going to acquire simply by doing strongholds and playing the game and completing challenges, this gear is nuts. And it's going to significantly change how you approach and play the video game. Everything down from your you know, your gear sets and your abilities that you're using, to your weapons, to your components that you're equipping onto your javelin. The Masterworked and legendary stuff is crazy. One example is this crazy shotgun that I got. Was my first Masterwork, actually, called Papa Pump, and it does double damage, 100% extra shotgun damage after a reload, which stacks up to twice. So you can basically get 200%. Additional shotgun damage, which is crazy. It just wrecks stuff. So endgame gear set is worth grinding for in Anthem, in my opinion, so far. Again, I haven't gotten everything or done everything yet, but I'm really enjoying just kind of looping through the strongholds, the missions, the challenges to get some of that endgame gear. It really reminds me and feels a lot like Final Fantasy XI. That sort of sense of like, oh man, I really want to get that one thing because it's really going to change the way I play the game. So that's an absolute plus and something that I'm really digging about Anthem, and one of the kind of overlaps that I see between Anthem and Final Fantasy XI. So this brings me to my final point that I want to make, and one of the changes that we could really see some really good stuff from if maybe games like Anthem and Destiny were to adopt it. The thing that Final Fantasy always did right with random stuff was that it was never really, and with a few exceptions to this, especially in the early days of Final Fantasy XI, but later on they really got away from this. But like, it was never a matter of like, oh, you want this piece of gear? Well, you need to go and randomly hope that you get it to drop. And yeah, you know, I'm thinking back of places like Sky and endgame content in Final Fantasy XI where, yes, there maybe was a boss that dropped a particular piece of gear that you were after. But later on in Final Fantasy's life cycle, they got to this place where most of the gear that you were wanting to get, like the AF augments, for example, or being able to take your baseline relic or AF or any of that stuff, and then you were essentially able to upgrade it. So you maybe had to go get the actual piece of gear from a drop or from something like that. But then the actual gear wasn't tied to RNG, to random number generator. It was tied to the materials that you needed to go get to craft that piece of gear. So yes, those materials are kind of RNG based, and that's just something to think about. You know, maybe go out, you get a drop from a monster, and then you use what you got to go craft your gear. But at least you knew what you were going for, right? I think that's a major issue that Anthem and Destiny both suffer from, is that just everything, and they've kind of tried to streamline it, so just everything is kind of tied to this RNG system. I think they should try to fix some of that. So why not make it, if you want a piece of gear in Destiny, if you want a masterwork weapon in Anthem, you go and you figure out what that thing is, you select it from a vendor, and then it's the materials that you need to go get to craft that item that are then the RNG things out in the world that you might get from a dungeon or a stronghold or a boss fight, not the weapon itself. I think that could be a really good way. I just think Final Fantasy XI brilliantly blended the RNG system with like a pathway to actually knowing what you were trying to get and where you were trying to get it. Maybe not in its early days, but later on for sure. So I think that's an improvement that we could see in Anthem. So who knows? Maybe those changes will be implemented as we go forward. I would like to see that for sure. There is some crafting in Anthem, but and I haven't quite gotten to that point in the game. So maybe there is some level of that later, but I'm not quite there yet. But I just wanted to make this video to spend a few moments just discussing what I think are some really interesting things that I see between Anthem and Final Fantasy XI. The endgame gear builds are really cool in Anthem. The fights are fun. You know, I'm enjoying my Interceptor and my Ranger here featured in this video, just kind of running around, making these build-outs, doing cool damage, and kind of feeling like I'm contributing to the team. All feelings that I used to have a lot in Final Fantasy XI. I really like how there's 4 different javelins that you can kind of jump into as needed. I really love how you're getting drops for your other jobs, quote-unquote, in the dungeons, in the strongholds, and then you can go back and use those to create your build-outs. Very interesting to me, and some of the things that Destiny maybe has gotten away from, maybe they should go back and take a look at how Final Fantasy XI has done some of these things in the past, and Anthem as well, and see how they can incorporate some of these changes perhaps into their game. Everybody, I hope you got some interesting ideas out of this video. As I've said in the whole thing, been having a lot of fun with Anthem. Got some weird overlaps with Final Fantasy XI, which has kind of kept me into that loop of it. So if you like Anthem, let me know in the comments. If you like the channel, check me out on Twitch, Epic99. I'm be happy to have you. We have a good time there, listening to some cool music, playing some cool games. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Hello, it's Epic99 here, coming at you with some Darksiders